The air inside the hive smelled like burning metal and death. Sergeant Cole moved through the dark corridors with his rifle raised, his boots crunching on broken shells and shattered walls. Behind him, 4 soldiers followed in silence. They had learned to be quiet in these places. They could hear a heartbeat from 50 meters away. The war had lasted 7 years. 7 years of blood and fire and endless killing. There were insect-like creatures, tall and covered in hard shell armor that could stop a bullet. They had 6 limbs and eyes that saw in every direction at once. They did not feel fear the way humans did. They did not surrender. They only fought until they died. Had killed hundreds of them, maybe thousands. He had stopped counting after the Battle of New Helsinki, where he watched his best friend get torn apart by a warrior. After that, the killing became easy. Too easy. But the war was almost over now. The humans had won. The great hives were falling one by one, and the queens were dying in their throne rooms. This hive on the moon of IV was one of the last, and his squad had been sent to make sure nothing survived. "Clear left," whispered Corporal Yates, a young soldier with cold eyes and steady hands. "Clear right," said Private. They moved deeper into the hive. The walls were made of some kind of resin that they produced from their own bodies. It looked like frozen honey, but it was harder than steel. Strange symbols covered every surface, a language that human scientists still could not understand. Checked his scanner. One life sign remained, deep in the heart of the structure, probably a warrior hiding in the dark, waiting to take a few humans with it before it died. He had seen it before. There were nothing if not dedicated to their cause. They reached a large circular door, placed a charge on the lock and stepped back. The explosion was small but loud in the silence of the dead hive. The door fell inward with a heavy crash. Entered first, his rifle sweeping the room. What he saw made him stop. It was not a warrior. In the center of the chamber, surrounded by broken equipment and scattered debris, was a nest. And in that nest, curled into a tight ball of trembling limbs, was a larva, a child. She was no larger than a human 6-year-old. Her shell was soft and pale, not yet hardened into the armor of an adult. Her eyes were huge and wet, reflecting the light from his helmet lamp. And on her back, folded tight against her body, were tiny wings that shimmered with colors had never seen before. He knew what those wings meant. He had been briefed on biology. Only the royal caste had wings. This was not just any child. This was a future queen. "Holy shit," Yates said from behind him. "Is that what I think it is?" Did not answer. He stared at the creature and the creature stared back at him. She was shaking so hard that her whole body vibrated. A high-pitched sound came from her throat, something between a whimper and a hum. She was terrified. Of course she was terrified. Her entire world had just been destroyed. Everyone she knew was dead. And now 5 alien monsters stood over her with weapons pointed at her head. "Orders are clear, Sarge," Yates said. His voice was flat professional. "No survivors, especially not royalty. You know what they can do if they grow up." New, a single queen could produce thousands of warriors. A single queen could rebuild an entire hive in 10 years. A single queen could start the war all over again. He raised his rifle. The larva made a sound. It was not a word, not exactly, but understood it anyway. It was the same sound his daughter had made when she was small and scared of the dark. The same sound every child makes when they are alone and afraid. "Please, please do not hurt me." Looked at her. He looked at his rifle. He looked at the bodies of warriors in the corridor behind him, creatures he had killed without hesitation just minutes ago. This was different. This was a child. "Sarge," Yates said. There was warning in his voice now. "What are you doing?" Lowered his rifle. "She's not a threat," he said. "She will be. Give her 20 years and she'll be pumping out warriors by the thousands. You know the orders." "I know the orders." "Then do it." Turned to face his squad. 4 soldiers looked back at him, their faces hidden behind helmets, their rifles ready. They were good soldiers. They followed orders. They did what needed to be done. So had he once. "The chamber is empty," said. "There's nothing here, we move out." Silent, long, dangerous silence. "Sarge," Yates said slowly, "I don't think you understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly. I'm telling you that this chamber is empty. I'm telling you that we searched it and found nothing. I'm telling you that we are leaving now, and we are never going to speak of this again." He met their eyes, one by one. He was their sergeant. He had led them through hell for 3 years. He had saved their lives more times than any of them could count. And now he was asking them to trust him one more time. Looked away first, then. Yates held his gaze the longest. Something passed between them, something that could not be put into words. Then Yates nodded just once and turned toward the door. "Chamber's empty," he said. "Let's move." They left, was the last one out. At the door he stopped and looked back. The larva had uncurled slightly. She was watching him with those huge, wet eyes. He did not know if she would remember this moment. He did not know if her species even had memory the way humans did. But he found himself hopping against all reason that she would. "Good luck, kid," he whispered. Then he walked away. The war ended 3 weeks later. The last queen surrendered and the guns finally fell silent, received a medal for his service. He threw it in a river and never looked back. He left the military and disappeared into the frontier colonies, taking work as a cargo hauler on the edges of known space. He grew old carrying boxes between forgotten outposts, talking to no one about his past. 20 years passed. He forgot many things, but he never forgot the chamber. He never forgot the child. And then, one ordinary day in a dirty station bar, he saw the news feed. Ships had crossed into human space. They were broadcasting a message in broken English, the same message over and over again. "We seek the one called Cole." His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The other patrons stared, did not notice. He was frozen, his heart pounding, his mind racing back through 2 decades to a dark chamber and a trembling child. She remembered. On the Of Prime, the queen sat upon a seat made from the bones of her ancestors. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, and her shell gleamed with the deep purple color of royalty. Her wings, fully grown now, spread behind her like stained glass windows in an ancient church. She was beautiful in the way that a storm is beautiful, or a blade. Her name was VII, and she ruled over 300 billion across 47 worlds. She was the most powerful queen in the history of her species, and she had spent 20 years looking for one human. The old advisors did not understand. They came to her throne room with reports of trade agreements and border disputes, and she waved them away. They spoke of military matters and political alliances, and she barely listened. Her attention was always somewhere else, her mind always returning to the same question. "Where is Cole?" She remembered everything. Her species had perfect memory, a gift and a curse. She remembered the smell of smoke and death. She remembered the terror of hiding in her nest while the world exploded around her. She remembered the human soldiers bursting through the door, their weapons raised, their faces hidden behind dark helmets. And she remembered him. The one who stopped, the one who lowered his weapon, the one who looked at her not with hatred or disgust but with something else, something she did not have a word for not then. She had learned the word since. Mercy. In culture there was a concept called or. It was a life debt, a bond that formed when one person saved another's life. The debt could never be repaid with money or goods. It could only be honored through service, through loyalty, through a lifetime of devotion. Had carried this debt for 20 years. It burned inside her like a flame that would not go out. She had to find him. She had to look into his eyes again. She had to understand why he did what he did. Her searchers had failed. Human governments refused to help, suspicious of her motives. They thought it was a trap or a trick or the first step toward another war. They did not understand. They could not understand. So she sent her own ships. She sent her most trusted seekers, warriors who had sworn their lives to her service. She told them to search every human colony, every outpost, every forgotten corner of their space. She told them to find Cole. And finally, after 20 years, they had found him. Far away on a dirty space station called Outpost 17, Cole sat in a bar and stared at the news feed. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. The other patrons were talking in worried voices, pointing at the screen, discussing what the ships might want. Knew what they wanted him. He stood up and walked out of the bar. He needed to think. He needed to plan. He needed to find a way off this station before anyone realized who he was. But it was already too late. Two men in dark uniforms were waiting for him in the corridor. They had the look of military intelligence, the kind of people who asked questions and did not accept lies as answers. "Cole," one of them said. "No, lied. Your identification chip says otherwise. Please come with us." They took him to a small room with no windows and one door. They sat him in a chair and asked him questions. Why was an alien queen looking for him? What was his connection to was he a spy, a traitor, a war criminal? Told them nothing. He could not tell them the truth. How could he explain that he had disobeyed a direct order 20 years ago? How could he explain that he had let an enemy queen live, and that decision might have changed the course of history? They would not understand. They would call him a traitor. They would be right. Hours passed. The questions continued, said nothing. Then the door opened, and a woman in an admiral's uniform walked in. She was old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many wars. "Leave us," she said to the intelligence officers. They obeyed without question. She sat down across from and studied his face. She did not speak for a long time. "I know who you are," she finally said. "I've read your file. Sergeant Cole, 3rd Infantry Division, Distinguished Service Record, medals for bravery. And then, suddenly, you disappeared. You walked away from everything and vanished into the frontier." "I was tired," said. "Tired?" She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I've been tired for 40 years. I didn't run away." "Maybe you should have." The Admiral leaned forward. "The Queen has requested a meeting. She says she will speak only to you. She has brought a diplomatic shuttle, unarmed, and she is waiting at the edge of the station. She has made it very clear that she means no harm." Felt something cold settle in his stomach. What does she want? "That's what I'm asking you." He looked at the table. He looked at his hands, old and worn from years of hard work. He thought about the child in the nest, the way she had looked at him with those huge, terrified eyes. "I don't know," he said, and it was almost true. The Admiral stood up. "Then I suggest you find out, because right now you are the only thing standing between us and another war. If that queen wants to talk to you, you are going to talk to her, and you are going to find out what she wants." She walked to the door, then stopped and looked back. "For what it's worth, I hope you're not a traitor, Cole. I hope there's an explanation for all this that doesn't end with me putting you in front of a firing squad." Then she was gone. They gave a clean uniform and brought him to the docking bay where the shuttle waited. It was a strange vessel, all curves and organic shapes, like something that had grown rather than been built. The hatch was open, and soft light spilled out from inside. Stood at the bottom of the ramp. His legs would not move. Somewhere inside that ship was the child he had saved 20 years ago, now grown into a queen with the power to destroy worlds. What would she say to him? What would she want? He took a deep breath and walked up the ramp. The interior of the shuttle was warm and smelled like flowers and spice. Strange symbols covered the walls, the same symbols he had seen in the hive all those years ago. And sitting in the center of the room, on a seat that looked like a throne, was VII. She was nothing like the child he remembered. She was tall and powerful and terrifying. Her wings spread behind her, filling half the room with color. Her eyes, multifaceted and gleaming, watched him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. But when she spoke, her voice was soft. "Cole," she said, "I have been looking for you for a very long time." He did not know what to say. He stood there, an old man in a borrowed uniform, facing a queen who ruled an empire. "Why?" he finally asked. She tilted her head, a gesture he somehow recognized as curiosity. "You gave me my life. Among my people, that creates a bond that cannot be broken. I have come to honor it." Shook his head. "I don't want honor, I don't want anything. I just want to be left alone." "That is not possible," said. "You changed my life, Cole. You changed everything. And now, whether you want it or not, you are part of my story, and I am part of yours." She stood from her throne and walked toward him, her movements smooth and graceful despite her size. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that he could see the patterns in her shell, the texture of her wings. "The universe is watching us," she said. "They want to know what happens next, so do I." Looked into her alien eyes and saw something he did not expect. He saw hope. The meeting took place on a neutral station in the border zone between human and space. It was a place built for exactly this kind of moment, a place where old enemies could sit across from each other without weapons or walls between them. Stood in a large room with windows that looked out at the stars. Human admirals and politicians stood behind him, watching from a safe distance. They had brought soldiers too, hidden in the walls and ceilings, ready to act if anything went wrong. They did not trust they did not trust either, but they needed answers and was the only one who could get them. The door on the other side of the room opened, and Queen entered. She moved like water, smooth and silent despite her size. Her royal guard stayed outside at her command. She had come alone as she had promised, just her and with a galaxy watching. She stopped in the center of the room and looked at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Had spent the last 2 days trying to prepare for this meeting. He had rehearsed speeches in his head, practiced questions, imagined every possible conversation. But now, standing before her, all those words disappeared. He was just an old man facing the consequence of a choice he made 20 years ago. "You look different," said. Her English was perfect without any trace of accent. "Older, more tired." "Time does that to humans," said. "Time does that to everyone." She walked closer, studying his face the way a scientist studies a specimen. "I have wondered about you for so long. I have imagined what you might look like, what you might say, and now here you are. Here I am." She stopped an arm's length away from him. Behind the security glass could hear the humans shifting nervously. They were afraid of her. They should be. She could kill everyone in this room before they could blink. But she did not move to attack. She simply stood there, her wings folded behind her, her eyes fixed on his face. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Why did you spare me?" The question hung in the air. Had asked himself the same thing 1,000 times over the years. He had never found a good answer. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I was tired. I had killed so many of your people. Warriors, soldiers, adults who chose to fight. That was war. I understood war, but you were just a child. You had not hurt anyone. You had not made any choices. Killing you would have been wrong." Tilted her head. "Wrong. This is a human concept I have studied for many years. Your species has a strange relationship with it. You are capable of great cruelty, yet you also carry this deep sense of right and wrong inside you. It confuses us." "It confuses us too," said. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was strange and musical, like wind chimes in a storm. "I have a request," she said. "A purpose for this meeting beyond personal curiosity." Waited. "I want you to serve as an ambassador between our peoples. not as a politician or a diplomat. You would be terrible at those things. I want you to serve as a symbol. A symbol of what? Of what is possible. She spread her hands, a gesture she had clearly learned from humans. When the war ended, my species was broken. The old queens were dead or mad. We had lost everything. Many believed we should continue fighting, even if it meant our extinction. They said humans were monsters who could not be reasoned with. She paused and her voice softened. I told them they were wrong. I told them about you, about the human soldier who could have killed me but chose not to. I told them that if one human could show mercy to an enemy child, then perhaps peace was possible. Felt something twist in his chest. You used me. I used the memory of you. I used the lesson you taught me. Because of that lesson, because of that one moment of mercy, my people chose a different path. We rebuilt. We reformed. We became something new. She stepped closer. Her eyes seemed to glow with inner light. You saved more than my life that day, Cole. You saved my entire species. Did not know what to say. He had spent 20 years feeling guilty about his choice, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. And now this alien queen was telling him that his moment of weakness had changed the course of history. I don't want to be a symbol, he said. I don't want to be anything. I just want to haul cargo and be forgotten. That is not possible anymore. You became something larger than yourself the moment you lowered your weapon. Whether you accept it or not, you are part of history now. Behind the glass could hear the human officials talking in hushed voices. They were processing what they had just heard. Some looked skeptical, others looked thoughtful, a few looked angry. One of them, a man in a military uniform, stepped forward and spoke into a microphone. Your Majesty, he said, his voice dripping with distrust, this is a touching story. But how do we know it's true? How do we know this isn't just a clever manipulation? Did not look at him. Her eyes stayed fixed on. You do not know, she said. You cannot know. Trust is not something that can be proven with documents or speeches. It must be built piece by piece over time. That is why I came in person. That is why I brought no weapons. That is why I stand here alone, surrounded by people who want me dead. She finally turned to face the humans behind the glass. I am offering you peace. Real peace, not the temporary silence of exhausted enemies. I am offering a future where our children do not have to grow up learning to hate each other. All I ask in return is a chance. Silence filled the room. The officials looked at each other, uncertain. This was not how they expected this meeting to go. Watchd's face. He was an old soldier. He had learned to read people, to sense when they were lying or hiding something. And what he saw in her eyes was something he had not expected. She was telling the truth. I'll do it, he said. Everyone turned to look at him. His wings lifted slightly, a gesture of surprise. You will, she asked. I don't want to be a symbol. I don't want to be famous or important. But if there's a chance that what I did can actually mean something, if it can help stop another war, then I have to try. I owe that much to all the people who died. Inclined her head, a gesture of respect. Then we begin, she said, together. The officials behind the glass erupted in argument. Some supported the idea, others opposed it, but was not listening to them anymore. He was looking at the queen, the child he had saved, the leader she had become. For the first time in 20 years, he felt something other than guilt and regret. He felt hope. But hope is a fragile thing, and there were those who wanted it destroyed. In the shadows of the station, men with cold eyes and bitter hearts watched the meeting unfold. They had lost friends and family in the war. They had sworn never to forgive. And they had decided that Cole, the man who showed mercy to the enemy, was a traitor who needed to die. The remnant had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and their patience was about to be rewarded. The formal reception was held in the grand hall of the diplomatic station. Humans stood on opposite sides of the room, watching each other with careful eyes. Some tried to make conversation. Most stayed with their own kind, uncomfortable with the idea of standing next to creatures they had been taught to hate. Stood near the center of the room, wearing a formal suit that did not fit him properly. He had never been good at these kinds of events. He preferred the quiet of his cargo ship, the simple routine of loading and unloading boxes. This world of politics and speeches made him feel like a fish trying to walk on land. Queen moved through the crowd with grace, speaking to human officials and diplomats alike. She seemed completely at ease, as if she had been doing this her whole life. Maybe she had. Queens were born for this. Watched her and felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride maybe, fear definitely, hope barely. He did not see the man approaching from behind. The explosion came without warning. A blast of heat and sound that threw off his feet and sent him crashing into a table covered with drinks and food. His ears rang. His vision blurred. For a moment, he was back in the war, back in the burning corridors of an alien hive. Then training took over. He pushed himself up, ignoring the pain in his ribs. The grand hall was filled with smoke and screaming people. Bodies lay scattered across the floor, some moving, some not. Human soldiers rushed in from the doors, their weapons raised. And through the chaos saw them. 5 figures in black armor moving fast and silent through the crowd. They were not soldiers. Their movements were too smooth, too practiced. These were killers, professionals who had done this many times before. And they were heading straight for. Did not think, he did not plan, he simply moved. His body was old, worn out from years of hard work and harder living. But somewhere deep inside, the soldier was still alive. He pushed through the panicking crowd, knocking people aside, ignoring the blood running down his face. Stood in the center of the room, surrounded by her fallen guards. She had been hit by the blast too, but she was still standing. Her wings spread wide and her body tensed for battle. She was not afraid. She was ready. But she did not see the man behind her, raising his weapon. So, he threw himself forward just as the shot was fired. The round hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around, dropping him to the ground. Pain exploded through his body, worse than anything he had felt before. He heard himself scream, heard the sound echo off the walls. Then he heard something else. The sound of a queen in battle. Moved like nothing he had ever seen. She was a blur of claws and wings, faster than any human could track. She struck the shooter with her arm and sent him flying across the room. Another attacker came at her with a blade. She caught his wrist, twisted, and the blade clattered to the floor. A third tried to run. She caught him before he made it 5 steps. Within seconds, all 5 attackers were down. Not dead, noticed, disabled. Broken arms and legs, but still breathing. She could have killed them easily. She chose not to. Turned and looked at. Her eyes were wild, her body still tense with the energy of battle. Then she saw the blood spreading across his chest, and something changed in her expression. She was at his side in an instant, her claws surprisingly gentle as she pressed against the wound. "Medical team," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "He needs help now." Tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "I'm supposed to be protecting you." "You did protect me. You pushed yourself in front of a bullet meant for my head." "Old habit." Human medics arrived and started working on his wound. Lay on the cold floor, staring up at the ceiling, feeling the strange peace that comes when the worst has already happened. "Why did you not kill them?" he asked, looking at the groaning attackers being dragged away by security. Sat beside him, her wings folded close to her body. For the first time since he had met her, she looked tired. "You showed me mercy once," she said quietly. "I have spent 20 years learning what that means. If I kill everyone who attacks me, I am no different from the old queens. No different from the monsters your people believed us to be." She looked at her claws, stained with blood but not death. "Mercy is hard. It goes against every instinct I was born with. but you proved it was possible. You proved that even in the worst moments, we can choose to be better." Felt something warm in his chest, and it was not the blood. I didn't know I was teaching anyone anything. I was just tired of killing. Sometimes the most important lessons are taught by people who do not know they are teachers. The medics lifted onto a stretcher and carried him toward the medical bay. Walked beside him, ignoring the stares from humans and alike. "The attackers were human," she said. "They call themselves the Remnant. They lost family in the war. They believe peace with my kind is a betrayal of everyone who died." "I know who they are," said. "I understand them in a way. I felt the same anger once." "But you did not let it control you." "No, I made a different choice." Nodded. "That is what makes you different. That is what makes you important." They reached the medical bay and the doctors went to work. Drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain medication making everything soft and distant. But every time he opened his eyes was there, sitting beside his bed, watching over him. Hours passed. The station returned to order. Security locked down. Investigations began. The remaining remnant members were arrested. Reports said it was a small group, acting alone, not connected to any government or military. But the damage was done. The attack had shown that peace would not come easy. There were people on both sides who would fight against it, who would rather die than forgive. When woke again, it was morning, or what passed for morning on a space station. Was still there, her eyes dim with exhaustion. "You should rest," he told her. "So should you. I asked you a question earlier. On the shuttle, I asked why you were doing all this. And I told you, the life debt." Shook his head, wincing at the pain the movement caused. "That's not all of it. There's something else." Was silent for a long moment. Then she looked away, toward the window and the stars beyond. "When you spared me, you did something that should have been impossible. You looked at an enemy and saw a child. You looked at a monster and saw a person. That moment changed me. It made me question everything I had been taught about humans." She turned back to face him. "I used your example to transform my people. I told them that mercy was not weakness. I told them that peace was not surrender. I told them that we could be better than our instincts, better than our history. And because of you, millions of them believed me." Stared at her, understanding finally dawning. "You built a religion around me." "Not a religion, a philosophy, a new way of thinking, all based on one human who made one choice in one dark room when no one was watching." She reached out and touched his hand, her claws careful not to scratch his skin. "You saved my life, Cole, but more than that, you saved my soul, and through me, you may have saved both our species." Closed his eyes. He thought about the young sergeant he had been, standing in that chamber 20 years ago, making a decision that would echo across the galaxy. He had just wanted to stop killing. He had never imagined it would lead to this. "I'm just a cargo hauler," he said quietly. "You were a cargo hauler," corrected. "Now you are something more, whether you want to be or not." She stood and walked to the door, then stopped and looked back. "Rest now, heal. The hard work is still ahead of us." Then she was gone, and was alone with his thoughts and the distant hum of the space station. He stared at the ceiling for a long time, thinking about choices and consequences, about mercy and meaning. Then, despite everything, he smiled. 5 years had passed since the attack on the diplomatic station. 5 years of meetings and negotiations, of arguments and compromises, of slow and painful progress. There had been setbacks. There had been moments when everything nearly fell apart, but somehow, against all odds, they had made it work. Now stood on a stage in Geneva, on Earth, the of humanity. The sky above was gray with winter clouds, but the city below was alive with color and celebration. Flags flew from every building, human and symbols side by side. Crowds filled the streets, millions of people who had come to witness history. The human concordat would be signed today. wore a formal suit, better fitted than the one from 5 years ago. His shoulder still ached where the bullet had hit him, a reminder of the price of peace. His hair had gone completely white and his face was lined with age. He looked like what he was, an old man who had lived through too much. Beside him stood Queen. Her shell gleamed with polish, and her wings caught the pale light like jewels. She had changed, too, in ways that were harder to see. The fierce young Queen was still there, but tempered now with wisdom and patience. Behind them sat rows of dignitaries from both species. Presidents and ministers, queens and advisors, all dressed in their finest clothes. They had come from across the galaxy to witness this moment, to put their names on a document that would change everything. A human official stepped to the podium and spoke into the microphones. "We are gathered here today to mark the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. For decades, our species were enemies. We fought a war that cost billions of lives. We taught our children to hate each other. We believed that peace was impossible." He paused and looked out at the crowd. "We were wrong." The crowd erupted in cheers. Human voices mixed with the strange, humming sounds they made when they were happy. The noise washed over the stage like a wave. When the crowd quieted, the official continued. "We are not here today because of treaties or politics. We are here because of choices. Individual choices made by individual people, choices that showed us a better way. And no one represents that more than the two people standing behind me." He gestured toward and 25 years ago, a human soldier named Cole made a choice. He could have followed his orders and killed an enemy child. Instead, he showed mercy. He let her live. And that child grew up to become Queen VII, the leader who brought her people from the edge of extinction to this moment of peace. Felt his face grow warm. He had never gotten used to the attention, the speeches, the constant praise. He was still just a cargo hauler in his own mind, still just a tired old man who had made one decision a long time ago. "Please," the official said, "a few words from each of our honored guests." "Step to the podium first." She moved with the grace of her species, but also with something softer, something she had learned from years of working with humans. She spoke in perfect English, her voice carrying across the plaza. "My people have a long memory. We remember every battle, every victory, every defeat. We remember the war with humanity. We remember the death and the pain and the hatred." She paused. "But we also remember something else. We remember a human soldier who could have killed me but chose not to. We remember the lesson his mercy taught us. That lesson has become the foundation of a new way of thinking for my species. We call it the way of the open hand. It teaches that strength is not only in the ability to destroy, but also in the ability to forgive." She turned and looked at. This man did not know he was changing the galaxy. He did not know he was teaching billions of aliens a new way to live. He was simply tired of killing. He simply saw a child and chose to let her live. That is what makes humans so remarkable. You are capable of terrible violence, yes, but you are also capable of unexpected mercy, and that mercy has the power to transform everything it touches. She stepped back from the podium, and the crowd cheered again. Then it was turn. He walked slowly to the podium, his old legs aching from standing too long. He looked out at the sea of faces, human and alike, all waiting for him to speak. He had prepared a speech. Advisors and speechwriters had worked on it for weeks. It was full of beautiful words about peace and unity and hope. He threw it away. "I'm not a speaker," he said. "I'm not a politician or a diplomat. I'm just an old soldier who hauled cargo for 20 years. He gripped the podium with both hands. "I didn't spare because I thought it would change the galaxy. I spared her because she was a child, and I was tired of killing children. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do. I still don't. But I knew it was the human thing to do." He looked at, standing beside him with her wings glowing in the pale light. "She's given me too much credit over the years. She's made me into something I'm not. But if my choice meant anything, it's this. Every single one of you has the same power I had. Every single one of you can make the choice I made. You can look at an enemy and see a person. You can choose mercy over hatred. You can be the one who breaks the cycle. He stepped back from the podium. That's all I have to say. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. The applause spread like wildfire until it filled the plaza, louder than anything had ever heard. He stood on that stage, an old cargo hauler surrounded by kings and queens, and felt tears running down his face. The Concordat was signed. Human and leaders put their names on the document one by one. When it was done, fireworks exploded in the sky above Geneva, colors and patterns that mixed the symbols of both species. Later that night, there was a private reception at a grand hotel. Slipped away from the crowd and found a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The fireworks were still going, painting the sky with light. He heard footsteps behind him and did not need to turn to know who it was. "You seem troubled," said, taking her place beside him. "I keep thinking about all the people who died in the war, wondering if they would think this was worth it, if they would forgive me for letting you live." Was quiet for a moment. "Perhaps some would not," she admitted. "Forgiveness is not easy for any species, but consider this. Because you let me live, the next generation will not know war. Human children and children will grow up together, learning from each other, becoming friends. Is that not worth the anger of ghosts?" Did not answer. He watched the fireworks and thought about the past and the future. "I had a daughter once," he said quietly. "She died in the war, attack on New Helsinki." Went very still. "I did not know. I never told anyone. When I found you in that chamber, I saw her. Not you, her. A scared child in a place filled with death. I couldn't save her, but I could save you." He turned to look at the Queen. "I don't know if that makes my choice better or worse. I don't know if I did the right thing for the right reason, but I know that she would have wanted me to let you live. She was kind like that, kinder than me." Reached out and touched his arm, her claws gentle against his skin. "Then honor her memory, not with guilt but with joy. Look at what her kindness passed through you to me has created. A galaxy at peace, a future worth living." Looked at her, this alien queen who had become something like a friend over the years. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you," she replied, "for everything." They stood together on the balcony, watching the fireworks fade and the stars appear. Two people from two species, connected by one moment of mercy that had changed the universe. The next morning took a walk through a park near the hotel. The grass was covered with frost and his breath made clouds in the cold air. He walked slowly, enjoying the peace. Near a fountain, he saw something that made him stop. Two children were playing together. One was human, a little girl with brown hair and a bright red coat. The other was small and pale, with tiny wings that had not yet learned to fly. They were chasing each other around the fountain, laughing and humming, completely unaware of the history that had made their friendship possible. Their parents stood nearby, watching. One couple was human, the other was. They were talking to each other, smiling, sharing stories about their children. Watched them for a long time. He thought about the war. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the chamber on IV, the scared child in the nest, the choice he made when no one was watching. And for the first time in 25 years, he felt at peace. He walked back to the hotel, leaving the children to their games. The future was in good hands. Far above, the stars shone cold and bright, watching over a galaxy that had finally learned the power of mercy. And somewhere in the universe, in a language no human would ever fully understand, children learned a new word. The word was forgiveness. And they learned it from a story about a human named Cole, who looked at an enemy and saw a child.